Hey, welcome to Hagman. It's the Hagman Report where truth can't be silenced. Last hour I said this, I suggested this, and sure enough, some people on the left they're blaming the Russians, even though they're blaming Russia propaganda accounts for the embarrassing fallout that we saw with the Iowa caucus. And you know who said they would do that? President Trump said that. Now, the results from last night's caucus were delayed due to this reporting issue relating to an app called Shadow. And the owner you saw on last hour, Tara McGowan, is a Mayor Pete Buttigieg supporter and is married. She's even married to one of his advisors now. Buttigieg declared victory last night despite internal polling showing that he lost to Bernie Sanders, which prompted the hashtag Mayor Cheat to trend on Twitter, and that in turn prompted numerous hysterical Buttigieg supporters to claim the hashtag was a creation of Russian-controlled bots. There it is. There's the insanity of the left. Oh, man. And by the way, there was that odd coin flip for delegates. Did you see that? Oh, yeah. Whatever. It's just dubious coin flip hands, but delegates. Okay. Very interesting indeed. There was a caucus voter who wanted to change their vote after finding out that Buttigieg was homosexual. Thought that was rather interesting as well. But the big winner in the larger scheme of things, Donald Trump last night. But take a deep dive into the shady firm Shadow. Understand what we're dealing with here, because I think that will show how this is all going to kind of play out at the end of the general election. That's my view. All right, if it's Tuesday, then it's Tuesdays with Stan Deyo, StanDeyo.com. Just I'm telling you, a good guy, fantastic friend of the program. And he's just just full of knowledge. If you go to standale.com, check out the headlines. Holly does such a great job in just aggregating headlines, things that you need to know, and I believe all important news, and it's broken down into different categories there at standale.com. Also, check out the EMP Shield. By the way, you can go to empshield.com/Hagman. And or use Hagman for a significant savings there. It's linked off of HagmanReport.com if you don't remember all of that, or if you go to EMP Shield by way of Sandale, just use Hagman as in the promo or in the checkout for a significant savings. I'm telling you, you need this. They developed a great product. All right, Stan Deyo from StanDeyo.com. Stan, how you doing, my friend?
Well, running a bit behind this morning or this evening. This morning I had a phone call from a retired border agent down our southern borders here, California, and it was a 2-hour discussion this morning, which ran me a bit behind on doing the site. But wow, the stuff this guy was telling me that goes on behind the scenes. Wow.
Border. Okay, so yeah, if you want to talk about it, if you can, then feel free. If not, no worries.
Yeah. Well, just let me say that he explained to me how the Secret Service was down there working with him as well. All kinds of things are being put into the mix to try to stop the illegal immigration coming across the border in various places. And he was talking to me. He was recovering from being shot several times by one of the illegals while he was trying to apprehend him. And he did manage to cuff the guy and get him down, even though he was wounded severely. But he's on the mend now. Then he's a longtime friend of ours, and so I appreciate his input.
Wow.
The rest of the things were kind of like personal things on stories that happened, while he was serving. He's now retired now because of the wound and everything.
Yeah. Got it.
What a great guy! People just don't realize the stuff these guys go through down there with short funds. Well, it's increasing now with the Trump administration, but just not having the backing of the government and this crazy split country we've got between the Democrats and the Republicans, it just plays havoc of what really needs to be done to protect the country. I think, as he agrees, I think we've been tipped over the edge now. Then they've just left it too long to fix the border and this situation about illegals, and we're just going to be faced, well, with civil war.
I'm really kind of leaning that way. I think you said it. It's been left too long. It really has. Because I'm not sure. I can't. I don't see a good end to this. That's just me. Maybe I'm pessimistic.
No, you're not. It's just being realistic, not pessimistic. The situation now, then, with the president and the impeachment and all this, which was all just a sham anyway, it just drives us closer to what I'm thinking George Soros was pushing for, which was the internal, civil war revolution here in this country. And we can't lose this one. We're going to have to physically fight, I think, to stop the communist overthrow of our United States Constitution, our government, and the country. Golly Moses.
I think so. I'm surprised. Well, I guess I'm not really surprised. I'm concerned the fact that we've let this, the educational system or the higher education system especially, just indoctrinate our young people to the point of embracement. We should not be embracing communism. To see people actually get excited about these communistic ideals or communism ideology it makes me ill. It really does. I can't, I don't know. We're too far gone, I think.
We are. And, if you say, well, what's the alternative? Some kind of a hybrid mixture between communism, socialism, and capitalism? Not really. The answer is a kingship of the entire planet where one being Jesus, of course, one being makes the decisions. And that means she doesn't have to go to Congress or to the Senate or anybody else to get permission to do this or that. And if there's a crisis, he has the ability to do immediate action to solve the crisis, to get funds or help, however, with technology to solve the crisis. A kingship by a king that is trustworthy, doesn't fail, an immortal creator who created the planet. So we're being driven to this, but people are just slow to realize it. They're still thinking in terms of, okay, we'll have this kind of a human-run system or that kind, where the people have a voice. And let's face it, people in a democracy or in a socialist communist country will vote themselves into power to get as much for themselves personally as they can as far as power and resources. That's just human nature. And with that, no matter what good intentions you started out with, every system we've tried, except for the one that we're going to try during the millennium, that we will accept, I'm sure, every system has failed other than that one. It might last 250 years for a quote-unquote great nation, and that's, the United States is in that window now to fail. Its time is up. That's another whole discussion. I've been talking with people over the weekend about whether America is a type, like a physical Babylon this time spoken of in the Revelation of John, and the spiritual one is over in the Vatican. I'm still, divided in my opinions on this, but the description of actual Babylon in the Old Testament so much fits, the modern one, with the rivers all over the place and a powerful nation. And I tried to fit this. I'm getting off topic here, but I tried to fit this in my mind to the situation here with the Vatican and with the United States. Which of these two institutions has a consumerism so great that every country on the earth wants them to buy their products? Well, it's the United States. It's not the Vatican. Their product is a religion type thing. So the United States is the great consumer of the world. And who is like the great police force of the world? Who do they call on, when they have problems in their country? Come help us solve this problem, this revolution, this border dispute, or whatever.
The French.
It's United. Oh, yes. I haven't had enough coffee to make that good yet. But anyway, the Vatican is going to be the spiritual thing which will oversee this global new world order underneath the dictator who will be the Antichrist at this time, coming soon, I think. Now, remember, in Daniel's interpretation of King Nebuchadnezzar's dream, the statue he was interpreting with the various uh, powerful nations in the area there through the ages. And the last one was two iron legs of the statue, and they were the revived Roman Empire. Now, the Roman Empire wasn't just in Rome, it had the western, all up through Europe, leg, and the eastern leg out into the Middle East to the Arabic countries in those areas there, including like Turkey, of course. So that revived Roman Empire will somehow in there will be the seat of the Antichrist. Now, it just does not mention the United States by name as a player, a piece in the puzzle at the end toward the Armageddon crisis, the war. So I think, as I said last week, I think America may well be the commercial Babylon, in conjunction with England, but mainly the United States, will be the commercial Babylon that's going to be destroyed in 1 hour by fire. And last week, as I said, I think I've come to the conclusion that when the Revelation John talks about the sun increasing its output 7 times, that it causes the oceans to burn and the green grass to burn the trees. Well, that's not killing off Israel and Europe and the nations involved in the final Armageddon crisis. It's killing off Babylon then, but where is it? The only other area it could be where it's killed 1/3 of the planet suddenly like that is the United States and part of South America and Canada, of course. So anyway, I digress from my normal stuff because this is just bugging the dickens out of me over the weekend. I've been trying to figure out in my own mind, is America the modern physical Babylon, or are we talking about the pile of bricks over in Iraq? I can't see any other country in the world other than us being that policeman and that mighty consumer that it talks about.
I have to give you a lot of credit because after last week's show, I did dig around and yeah, I have to agree with you. Sadly, and as much as I don't want to agree with you, I have to agree with you that America sounds like it fits fits pretty well with the description as modern Babylon. But I could be wrong. I don't know. But that's what I came up with.
Look, it's discussion points, trying to understand the word as it's revealed to us by current events. So, people shouldn't get excited if we say something that disagrees with their picture at the moment, because we are discussing, not pontificating. I don't know all the answers, and this is one I've been chasing the answers to this for some time, many years. But in our current state here, with a president that is defending the Christians and the Jews and Israel, who's a strong, bold type president, he has turned America back to being proud. And I often reflect back on the statement that pride goes before a fall. Now, we can get too proud and, we can be in trouble and the country can fail. So I'm cautious about not being too proud, but I am really pleased with the President Trump and his administration, what they've been able to accomplish in spite of the left-wing communists that are trying to overthrow our government. But just be cautious, folks. We're winning these battles, but be cautious.
That's right. I agree. 10-4. All right.
10-4. Okay. There are a number of things. I was running a wee bit behind this morning because of talking to the agent I was telling you about. But
that's all right. We can ease into things. Let's just ease into things. Take your time. Relax. Let's just have a discussion.
I've had time since lunch to figure out these things, but there are a couple of them that I don't have links on yet down at the bottom of the page, but I can probably add them to tell you what they were about. One of the things that's not, you might not think, well, okay, why is this important? It's slide 46. It's called An Accelerator of Human Progress. And this is what Mohammed bin Salman is talking about, his new city of Neom. And they've upgraded their website and put a lot of things in there as to what they're doing and what different divisions they've got, who they're hiring for various positions, making this like a super scientific engineering think tank that's going to develop stuff for the world, new kind of water purification, new kind of alternate energy but mainly it's still solar, what they're talking about. But the thing that caught my attention was somebody said, have you seen about this city in Saudi Arabia? Well, of course, you and I have been talking about it for a couple of years, but when I went to the site just to check on it, that picture in that the icon there on slide 46 is what greets you. It's that big crystal ball type thing, which we saw in that Da Vinci painting that Mohammed bin Salman allegedly did purchase. And this crystal ball kind of is the theme that he's attached to NEOM, trying to see the future, I think, and try to make the future with his developments. And they're showing people, migrating their scientists that they're getting in to set up these think tanks and production areas. So it's just something that I thought was worth commenting on because of this pattern he's got with this crystal ball. Wow, that's a big thing in Saudi Arabia, as President Trump saw when he was over there and put his hand on the planet. They've got like a crystal ball, all lights up and stuff. He's got global plans, and this NEOM kind of just tells you that with all the different projects in it. Let me just see if I can get over there and see what I'm...
And, Stan, one of the things that I know this is kind of a digression too, but one of the things I saw or realized again is the connection of that city to what is known as the Saudi Vision 2030, which is kind of like a kissing cousin to Agenda 2030, I suppose. It's an Arabic version of Agenda 2030. Agenda 21, 2030. And then, so it's just, it's all kind of globalist stuff.
Well, I watch him because at the moment, and that's just at the moment, I don't know what's going to happen in the next few years, but Mohammed bin Salman seems to be building a global package, for technology and for finance. I mean, he owns stock in that blockchain type business, which is going to be, already is, the method that companies exchange money between each other is a digital currency. So he's got stock in that, and he's building this think tank, to rival what the Israelis do in their own think tanks, like at Technia and stuff, or in Israel. I mean, they've been leading the world in research in medicine and in physics, saltwater, reclaiming fresh water from saltwater, all kinds of things. I mean, they've just been doing head over heels developments and new technologies to help the planet. So I see that Mohammed bin Salman is trying to compete with them with his own accelerator, cooker, or whatever you want for inventions. Now, enough on him. Over on slide 48, you can click on that and read the article. It says, Pentagon makes quarantine housing announcement as more U.S. virus cases appear. And each of these bases, I think it's each, will house 1,000 sick people who have been infected with the coronavirus. Interesting to me in that the Training Institute in Fort Carson, Colorado, the Army base just across the highway from me here, is where they're going to dump 1,000 of these infected people and treat them. And then Travis Air Force Base in California, Lackland Air Force Base in Texas, and the Marine Corps Air Station at Miramar in California. These are the 4 areas that are going to be where they set up the victims to isolate them and to treat them. And there is some hope that they will find a cure for this. And I don't know whether it's going to be a hot toddy like the guy over in the UK said fixed his coronavirus, but it sounds like a good approach anyway.
I'd do that just for doing it.
Just general principles.
Yeah. And in fact, I believe that could be actually prevent, let's all have a hot toddy tonight. But Stan, have you thought any more about the origins of this? Do you think this is a tweaked bioengineered virus, or are you kind of just not really looking in that direction?
No, I'm looking in that direction. It's a bioengineered weapon. When you see patents in the U.S. Patent Office from last year, this year, it's actually last year, concerning ownership of the coronavirus, ownership of a virus.
Yep.
That's been created.
Yep.
Now, why do we create these things? Well, in some cases, viruses are being cultured to fight cancer and various other anomalies in the human physiology, for good causes. But like the atomic bomb, or nuclear energy, that was a neat thing to patent, because it made free energy, in essence, from, the nuclear power, or not free, but, a much more concentrated source and huge amounts of energy you can get from it. And now then, of course, we know since, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that it can be used in war.
Right.
So you've got 2 sides of the coin. So do you tell your scientists, stop looking, stop inventing, stop discovering, because it might be used for war? You can't.
You can't do that. That's right.
It's going to take someone with intelligence and compassion to run this planet and to release what technologies are necessary and harmonic with the whole problem, the whole world. Sorry, it is a problem at the moment, but the for this to be harmonious to all things considered, all people considered, all countries and life forms, you have to have a person in charge, a being in charge, that knows the formula for the planet, that helped build the planet, and that's Jesus. I mean, there's
That's it. You
know,
got that right. Because to me, I don't think anyone's up to the job right now. I don't think there's anyone capable of governing planetary governance. I guess that's the way to say it, except our Lord and Savior. So that's just my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, me too. And if we believe the Bible, which I do, and it's a historical and like a factual document, we're told about these things and why humans running, the planet are not going to work. It takes the creator of the planet who has the blueprint for how everything should work in harmony. And I'm talking, even flows of rivers and animal life and trees, all these things have to work in harmony with each other. And the only one that really knows that is the creator of these things. It's the architect. As the Masons say, he's the great architect.
Oh, you quoted the Masons.
Oh dear, sorry. Yes.
Watch out now. I'm gonna get a whole bunch of comments now. See. Oh well. All right, but no, you're right. You're exactly correct. Especially when you see where, at least in my view, where mankind is. Well, I don't have faith in mankind, I guess. In the goodness of mankind, I should say.
Hey, up on slide 51, I think it is. Yeah, the Taal volcano we were talking about, in the last few weeks, came and went and settled down, and everybody's starting to move back into the Philippines in the areas where they had to evacuate because they might be like part of a new Pompeian type explosion and be buried in ash. Well, 5 hours ago, I think. Now, then, I'm just doing a quick math. Yeah, earlier today. Anyway, we'll say they have now put out an alert that it looks like it's going to blow again. Now, the Philippines, they're saying the volcano is now looking like it's going to go again, and you got people traipsing on back home thinking that it's all over. This is only one of many things that are happening with earthquakes and volcanoes around the planet that indicate an increase. It is an increase in these kind of phenomenon, and they all, to me, kind of underscore what I've been talking about as far as the crust of the planet separating. It's being expanded and pulling apart, which is allowing these magma intrusions to come up through, plate tectonic borders and earthquake fault lines in the United States and elsewhere. It's all happening. I mean, I know it's an old hippie phrase. It's all happening, man, but it is. I guess that tells my age.
But no, that's all right. Me too. But I gotta tell you, your explanation when I first heard it, I don't know how many years ago, about the expansion of the Earth, and how the cracks would form, and how, man, it just makes so much sense. And even as it relates to time, as it relates to just about everything you can think of, this makes sense to me. It's something I can wrap my brain around and understand. And you're right. So yeah, come on back. Oops. Well, maybe not so fast. Watch out. Look at the pretty colors. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I know that governments, Philippines is no exception, do try to sugarcoat, a pill that's bad. Like you've got a danger, you've mitigated the danger, you think, but you're not going to tell them that if there's, other things about to happen because you're not sure. And we've discussed that, how the USGS itself, when it was over trying to pick the eruption point of Pinatubo, the scientists, they showed a documentary. They weren't sure themselves whether to tell people, 1 million people in the blast area, whether, look, it may blow now. It looks like it's going to blow, and so get out of town. They had to soft pedal it because if they were wrong, they would be so discredited that nobody would believe it when they announced the real, like the kid crying wolf or something. So I understand the Philippine, Geological Society doing the same thing, and then here they couldn't put it off any longer because the eruptions are starting to rumble. The earthquakes underneath the cone are starting to rumble. Yep. And It's the Tall volcano is just one of several, down in North Island, New Zealand, in the Taupo caldera, where they're sitting on a fault line that is spreading and sliding apart, and it's going to reach a critical point at some time really soon, where it's just going to erupt from the magma pressure coming up through these fault lines and these cracks in the Earth's surface. Anyway, that's an old drum I'm beating, but
it might be old, but it's certainly relevant. So not a problem. Okay.
I got an email from one of your listeners here about the difference between Richter 1, Richter 2, earthquakes, and okay, it's 10 times the strength of the one below it. A Richter 3 is 10 times greater than a Richter 2. Well, that's in magnitude, but there's magnitude, the shocking, magnitude, left, right on the surface. Then there's the amount of energy released, whether it shook or not, right. The shaking intensity, the modified Mercalli intensity scale, all these things, which kind of crosses your eyes. But I've put a link up to the USGS. So they have a site of info, which I found very interesting. I play in this area all the time, but I found reading this, explained a lot of things to me I hadn't thought about as far as earthquake detection, measuring where it came from, how strong it was, how deep it was, all this kind of stuff. And I did some experiments on that graph or that picture I show in the icon part of the page there. It shows an earthquake in some part of San Francisco there with little rings going out from it. And part of what you'll read in the articles there on the USGS site shows how they have different seismometers all over the planet. And so when an earthquake occurs, the one that first reports the shaking is closest to the site. So they take that as a big circle they draw because they don't know exactly where it is, but it happened within, say, 3 milliseconds of when they detected it. So, or when it happened. And then they take seismometers that are further away and they draw circles of intensity around that. And they do what they call a solution of 7, linear equations to find out the location of the earthquake, which is not one spot, but an evolving tear in the surface of the Earth. I always thought, well, okay, the earthquake dot is there. That's where the earthquake center was, the epicenter. But it's not a single little spot there. It spreads along as the fissure opens up. And so you've got the earthquake zone, if you wish, down where it's occurring and unwrapping. So anyway, I played with that over the weekend with the concentric circles and the overlapping circles that you use for, in algebra to find out the common center. And it works, but their equations are much more accurate. So, and then you've got to have different soil types, water versus, granite and things, and how they transmit the shock wave at what speed. And they've got all these factors they have to put in to solve the location and depth, intensity, magnitude of a single earthquake. And that's why they say on their site, such and such earthquakes have not been reviewed by a human yet. Well, that's because there are a lot of factors you got to take into consideration, and it really takes a human mind that studies and knows all these factors and can put them together and solve that equation. But anyway, if you do go to that site, the link there on the USGS, and scroll down, you will. And let me just get there, and I'll tell you what you'll see. You'll see articles on the same site: seismometers, seismograms. What's the difference? How do they work? How can I make my own seismometer? What was the duration of the earthquake? Why don't you report the duration of each earthquake? How does the duration affect the magnitude? How can an earthquake have a negative magnitude? Instead of Richter 1 or 0, it's -1. They have a logical explanation. It's not a big deal, but these are things that people see occasionally. They say, a -1 earthquake? What happened? Did it just become a black hole and suck everything in? So, good questions. And the negative depth, how can it be up above the air, the surface in the air somewhere, when it's occurring down in the seabed or on the land somewhere? And but all these articles down there are just well worth reading and studying, because it'll open your mind to the difficulties they have in producing the information that we do get from them on the USGS site. My hat's off to them.
Wow.
There's a lot of work involved in that, much more than I thought.
Well, thinking about it, when you mentioned earlier in the conversation about, the earthquake location being a dot, and as opposed to a dot, it's more of a tear or a line. I mean, if you take a piece of paper and just rip the paper from one end to the other, that's no longer a dot. That's an area, and that would reflect.
Yeah.
At least in my mind, I can picture that. So if that was the Earth, yeah, okay, I get that. And then all of the other things that you mentioned. My goodness, boy, there's a lot to
Um,
that.
yeah. Oh, I mean, just you read those articles and you'll see I really have a greater appreciation for the work those guys do.
Yeah.
And what slide is that? Let's talk about slide 49, global earthquakes in the last 7 days. You can zoom that thing up and move it around if you want.
Okay.
What we see there is normal activity, over east of Australia, in New Zealand, north of New Zealand, and along the fault lines up through New Guinea. Normal kind of earthquake activity. But what I'm looking at this week is in the Caribbean. If you just click on where Florida is, it'll zoom it up.
Yep.
There's something wrong there. First, we had Costa Rica, a few thousand earthquakes there in a place that doesn't normally get them. And so I thought, well, what's causing that? That's weird. And then this week we've had, a bunch, hundreds, and some are reasonably large, over in the what do we call that there? That's the Bay of the Cayman Trench, the Cayman Islands Trench. If you go to slide 50, and that's a close-up of this activity I was talking about. It's a big picture. And you'll see in the Cayman Islands where these earthquakes are all along a very sharp cliff or cleft, like a rip, if you wish, in the Earth's surface. And it's along the plate tectonic border, and you can see the red line, which is telling you where the fault lines are known to be in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And that's opening up. But if you then look at to the east of that, over into the Dominican Republic and into Puerto Rico in between them, there's an extension of that fault line that runs over the Dominican Republic, over Haiti, and over Puerto Rico. But this is showing then that whole weakness in the surface of the Earth, that that fault line, which is obviously deep, it's becoming more active and spreading out. Why? You see, this is part of this whole global expansion thing I'm talking about. The weak points are splitting apart. It's a whole other discussion about how these formed and how over Costa Rica there to the right side of it, it forms a shape that looks like the head of a submerged asteroid that hit a long time ago and scooted everything that way during the great asteroid impact that caused the flood over, from over in the Indian Ocean. Anyway, things are happening. Keep an eye on these areas. If more earthquakes occur along that fault line that we see there, then we can be reasonably certain that this is where stress is being relieved. Why it's pulling apart there, weakness in the crust.
All right. It seems like as well we're having more within the continental United States. It just seems comparative. Maybe it's just my skewed vantage point, but it just seems like even things are heating up here in the continental United States. But one thing I noticed too, does it seem like nothing ever happens in Great Britain? I mean, I don't know why, but rarely do I ever see any dots over the UK over there. I'm just saying, maybe I just I don't know.
I had never thought about it, but I guess you're right.
Seems awful quiet up there.
Well, if you look in the seabed, you look for great, splits in the ocean floor. These troughs and trenches, and that tells you where you're going to see pressure release. So maybe Great Britain was fortunate in that respect. It's not, mind you, it did separate from Europe. You can see the White Cliffs of Dover. There's a separation there somewhere. So maybe offshore between UK and the mainland. I don't know.
Yeah, perhaps. I just one of those things you think about when you don't have any more, or when you got nothing better to do. Okay.
Yeah. Wow. All the time. Just bored to tears. Yeah. Well, there's so much happening in politics and world economy and geophysics at the moment. It's amazing the amount of stories that we have to go through here and sort out the best ones to tell, the central point of what's happening.
For sure.
I was looking, we had snowfall last night, which is becoming rare at the moment here where we are in Colorado for some reason. But as I was watching the snowflakes fall down and cover everything in white, make it all look clean and pristine, I kind of had a funny thought. I said, wouldn't it be neat if the Holy Spirit descended on the whole earth like that, like gentle snowflakes, and cleaned everything and made it all white and pure again? Just a crazy observation. But anyway.
That is a nice thought. Yeah, it would be nice. I happened to be thinking about that this morning. I was running errands pretty early, and as day turns into, or as night turns into day, you have the different shades of gray and darkness, and then as it became lighter, I just noticed, minus the snow, everything is just looks so brown and dirty and gray and yeah, I don't know. It's just
you know how New York is. You're talking about grungy and whatever. I remember arriving in New York on a trip over the Middle East. It was just a layover, but I looked around and saw all the dirt in the street and things, but it had all been covered the night before by snow. And I thought, how pretty this is. The lights on the snow and all the filth and stuff had been covered up by this nice white blanket, and it made New York palatable. I'll probably get cards and letters from that, but anyway, you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
So
Yeah.
clean.
Yeah, and maybe that contributes to the magic of Christmas time, with the snow but I get what you're talking about, and I don't know, it takes some of the ugliness away.
Yes, adjust your teeth there.
I guess,
okay.
Something falling out. You're spitting bubbles or whatever you call it. Here, find your friend. Okay.
Okay.
I don't know.
Slide 52. Now it shows a picture of Soleimani, but that's what the article put up there. Talking about the White House, Trump is threatening to veto a pair of bills the House plans to vote on this week aimed at restricting Trump's ability to wage war on Iran. Now, the way these sneaky devils do this is they attach this to other things, other bills, so that it's a rider on it, if you wish. And it's a bill that like the administration want to pass, but then again, with this rider on it, they don't want to pass that. And so it's a way that it causes a blocking of the legislation to be passed one way or the other. Anyway, if they restrict the president to act within his legal constitutional rights to protect the United States, they have to be considered enemies of the state. They really do.
You would think.
Yeah. And all through this whole impeachment stuff, I wondered, how can they get away with the stuff they're saying and doing and lies they're telling? It's like King's X. You can't hurt us. We can say anything we want, and lie, cheat, and steal, and just not honorable at all.
No. And I keep hearing the phrase or the statement, future presidents are gonna pay for this, or gonna be held to, they're gonna experience this. That's all. I mean, that's nice, but what we're seeing right now is just horrific. And you're right. How is there anything Donald Trump should be doing that he's not doing? To me, it just seems like if I was in that position, I'd be like really frustrated. I'd be wanting to kick some, open a can of whoop, I would be so, because this is not right. I don't care how you look at it, it's not right. But I don't know. Yeah, it's separation of powers. I get all that, but this is just, you can't. I don't know. Frustrated.
Well, it is, and we're coming to a head. I can't say it enough. We've totally divided the country, and it's because of the communist, threat to us, which has been insidious. Because when I was like 16, I think it was, and my dad and his brothers formed Timely Publications down in Dallas. Mm-hmm. They were helping the John Birch Society and other conservative groups to wake up America to the communist infiltration of our schools and our seminaries and that kind of stuff, with a long-term plan, several generations, to overthrow the capitalistic U.S. government.
Yeah.
And here we are. This is like, 50, almost 60 years after they started that. It is now starting to happen. And this was forethought, foresight on my parents and my uncles and their wives and stuff. On their part, we worked with H.L. Hunt, with the Hunt Oil and stuff. He funded a lot of stuff to try to wake up America. And people after World War II were just tired of thinking about any other kind of war or civil war or invasion or anything. They just wanted to relax and, throw the ball out in the park on Sunday and, have children go to movies, that kind of stuff. They didn't want to hear about being invaded right then. General Patton, he knew that the Russians were going to come after us. They weren't going to stop. And he wanted to turn around after World War II had ended with Germany and just turn right around and invade Russia and stop all this nonsense. And, of course, the administration at that time said, no, we won't do it. Anyhow, it's just kind of, to me, it's like, oh, yeah, we talked about this 60 years ago. It's finally happening. To a lot of people, it's probably eye-opening, but to me, it's like, been a while coming, but here it is. Yeah, understand. Illuminati, world government. Yeah. It's all there.
I woke up very late in life, I suppose, and even, I mean, I always understood the cloud of the communist threat, or at least I recognized that potential, but I never understood that it was already here. And it was that post-World War II era, like you were talking about, with the John Birch Society and the Hunt, paying for the education of this threat. Stan, I got to tell you, I think back around 2001, and especially when seeing the kind of behind the scenes of the carnage in New York. If I would have, and I say this often, if I would have told the individual who took me back behind the scenes there that we'd have Muslims in Congress, I mean, overt, Rashida Tlaib and others, and a potential Islamic CIA director in Brennan, I'd probably have been kicked out of there as a kook.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
All right. Yeah. It's a red-green axis or a red-green thread going through our country that's taken away from us.
Well, I'm at the point now where I hope we make it all the way to the election in November without massive civil disorder here in this country.
Yeah.
It's only going to take a small spark to set it off.
It's true.
There's too many people at odds with each other. Hey, listen, speaking of sparks, did you watch the game, the Super Bowl?
I did not. I caught maybe a couple of plays, if that counts.
Well, we watched the whole thing, and we were supporting the Chiefs, so it came out well for us. But one of the things reason I was talking about the Hunt family is I realized that the Chiefs were owned by Lamar Hunt's wife. And of course, that was part of Lamar was who my dad dealt with as well. And seeing them get a win, on this was kind of really satisfaction to me because they put so much into other things to try to wake up America. But for them to win this, take the underdogs and win was really a great deal for the family.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of neat. Go ahead.
I remember, Dad was over at H.L. Hunt, Lamar's dad, over at his place there in Dallas one night. And he said, that guy's got millions and millions of dollars, and he has a payphone in his hallway.
Okay.
The carpets were threadbare, and he would take his lunch to work in a paper sack. Strange fellow, but really quite, alert to what was happening in the country. Interesting man.
Eccentric, I suppose.
Yeah.
Frugal.
Yeah.
But I get that too. If I had $1 million, I would do everything I could possibly do to save that $1 million. I don't know. I would be. I don't know.
Well, Howard or H.L. Hunt was, he was from a poor environment as a kid, and he worked his way by hard work and ingenuity to get to where he was. And he's one of those kind of millionaires that you say, well, I don't mind him having the wealth because he earned it, and he's helped the community by doing what he did.
Sure.
So anyway, it's kind of a period of my life that was quite interesting where, we rented the Dallas Memorial Auditorium there and held rallies to stop training Yugoslav communist pilots there in Texas at Perrin Air Force Base. And we had people come to speak to us like, what was his name? Barry Goldwater. And I was backstage with these guys, with General Walker. fact, they tried to kill General Walker during that time we were holding these meetings. Put a shot through his living room window there in Dallas, and he
That
wasn't
was
there.
that was with that was attributed to Oswald, wasn't it, or one of?
Oh, yeah, they did. Whether he did or not, I
Right.
don't know. But I found General Walker to be an amazing, representative of the military mind and of our conservative position. Mr. Sidney Latham was H.O. Hunt's attorney, and he chaired the meetings in the auditorium there. First one we had, which was announced in the newspaper, we had people that filled up the floor part of the auditorium, the central floor underneath the stage.
Right.
And then we had a few of us out on the seats around the edge. And I remember Dad was there with some, he had a bunch of money, like $1 bills that he had when he was getting the paycheck cash for his staff there at the research lab. Anyway, he was there at that meeting. And when Sidney Latham was talking, he was making these points. And Sidney was trying to raise interest to get donations to help fight, to get this to Congress and stop the training of the Yugoslav pilots. Well, Sidney went to a certain part in the lecture where everybody was emotionally on a high, and he says, and we need your support, your help to do this. And with that, my dad jumped up, reached in his pocket, and got a handful of $1 bills, all brand new, like they'd fly, threw them over the railing into the floor below. As they settled to the floor, the balcony, the railings filled with people doing the same thing. And in the chairs, they were all just throwing money to the floor. They had to sweep it up in bushel baskets. And it's a spark like that initiated the whole movement of the National Indignation Committee, is what it was called in those days. So I lived in some interesting times with interesting people.
About how old were you? Because that had to be back, in the early 60s?
Yeah, I was,
Mid 60s?
15,
Okay.
16, something like that. Yeah.
Because I think Mr. Hunt passed away in the mid 70s, maybe.
I
Anyway.
guess I don't remember,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Wow, that had to be something for you to see all of that, huh?
it was, and now we see, 60 some odd years later, or 58 years later, that finally the people are waking up when it's too late. But at least we tried, and the message did get out for a long time.
Right. Well, God bless that man, and God bless you for doing all of that, and and your dad, and it's just wow.
They're the unsung heroes of all this. They really are.
Yeah.
And they weren't like, grabbing money or stuff like that, for personal gain. Everybody was contributing more than they could afford in time and money to try to help America wake up that we were being subverted at that time by fifth columnists.
Well, Stan, I look at it this way. I see that's what you're trying to do, and I'd like to think people look at me in that same fashion, that I'm trying to do that as well. And maybe I can't do it as well as other people, but I can bring people to this platform to do it. You're that modern day, I don't know, bellwether. You're that modern day Hunt, H.L. Hunt. Well,
I wish.
Wait a minute. Maybe not you're that modern day person who says, hey, these are the troubles. Yeah.
The canary.
Yeah.
Yeah. And look, people listening to the show here, they think, oh, wow, you guys are doing all this kind of stuff. But every person that is aware of the situation and shares it with another person is joining the fight. It's really important, on a face-to-face, person-to-person basis, they know you. And when you alert them to these dangers, you're helping in this fight.
Yep.
And it's a fight for survival.
Man, it is. And the more I look at things, the deeper I look at things, because there's open source information, and there's information that we acquire on our own, and then there's different levels of the information. Man, the more I learn about things, the more I realize, number one, I know less than I thought I knew, and number two, it's more complex at times than I know about. But most importantly, I believe it's a matter of our survival, and that's one thing that I don't take lightly. The survival of this country, especially in our way of life. because I don't see this going well.
I mean, it's getting to the point where being a patriot is a crime.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Hey, yeah, you're right.
Well, the stage we're going through now is not going to be without pain and suffering and death. I mean, when George Washington and the rest of the Continental troops, when they fought to break free of what was like a tyrannical reign, from England, people died. People lost their farms and stuff. They stood to the forefront and alerted people and defended the country as best they could, and they did a good job of it by the grace of God. And it's not something that makes you rich. You might get a mention in a history book, but it costs lives and fortunes. And
do you think? And I know we're just kind of just talking here, and do you think that today's men? Oh my goodness, are we going to have the guts? Are we going to have the will to fight for this country, or are we going to wimp out? I mean,
I think the majority of our men in this country are, the younger ones particularly are going to be doubtful, probably wimpy as far as being shot at or defending us. And I know all the military guys and ex-military would stand up and defend us. But I guess we could attribute it to too much conditioning in the TV and too much fried chicken with all the hormones in it,
That's true. You're right.
Yeah, I reassess. Sorry, go on.
No, I look at Virginia, and despite the fact I was encouraged by the number of people who turned out in Virginia, 2 weeks ago, whenever that was.
Yeah.
But now what? Now that now what? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I noticed that they were all strapped, carrying weapons and stuff, but legally, and nobody got shot, and no fights incurred, and it was a demonstration much unlike what the left would do when they demonstrate, their left socialist positions. But I was proud that these guys put a strong foot forward, but did it legally, and ethically correct. Anyway.
Yeah, but Stan, the bottom line is nine gun bills are now ready to pass in Virginia, and so let's just say they pass. What the tens of thousands of people were protesting against and saying we're not going to take it, so they pass. Now, what do we do in that particular case?
It's going to be. Do we what?
Do we? And I'm serious about this. Do we go into the State House and armed and I mean this sincerely, and say, you know what, y'all made a bad mistake by passing these laws, and we have to. They're unconstitutional, and now we got to do something. Now we're here because I think back to the Battle of Athens in '46 and in McMinn County, Tennessee, where veterans came back and found corruption, and they took care of it. And they went to the armory, got the guns, and gathered together and kicked some booty. So I'm not sure. I know this is not 1946, but just saying. I don't know.
Well, the guys came back from the war, and they certainly have been trained in what's right, and what's wrong, and how to correct it. Yep. Against a mortal enemy, and we're facing mortal enemies here now. So the question just still remains now: what are they going to do there? Are they, when they knock on your door and say, "We want your weapons," are they going to shoot the people trying to collect the weapons who are performing a legal duty they have to the state? I've argued with myself over this. What happens if members of the police force come here and say, "We're coming to get your guns"? And I might know some of the guys, and so do I just shoot them or what? What do you do?
Yeah, that would be very tough, and I've wrestled with that myself. But I had a discussion with a police officer, and he wouldn't be the one coming to my house, but I said, "Look, I'm afraid. I'm afraid that I have to shoot. I'd have to shoot. You want my guns? You're coming in here. I probably would have to shoot you." And I was dead serious. I'm dead serious now. If somebody came in to take my guns against the Constitution, and when I've done nothing wrong, when I'm, based on some obscure or some gun grabbing legislation, yeah, you know what, Stan? I thought about this, but I'll tell you what, I'd probably have to stand my ground, And
Yeah,
I wouldn't like
yeah.
it. I would not like. Man, please don't make me do it. But
I know, I know.
mm,
Well, how does state law uh, overturn constitutional law? That I just don't understand how they can do that anyway.
it doesn't. Can't. It can't. Now, state law can overturn, in some cases, county and municipal law. That's the Dillon's rules principle, and then there's the opposite of that. But there's nothing, any law that's antithetical to the Constitution of the United States is no law at all. It's null and void, and that's Marbury versus Madison. That's a precedent. But yet, who cares about laws anymore? It seems like, I mean,
Well, yeah, yeah, you're right.
boy, we were
Well,
doing so well, weren't we? We were kind of talking about snowflakes and puppy dogs and rainbows. Now we're talking about shooting people coming into the house.
not quite so serious, but yes, I guess it is. It's slide 53 about Jared Kushner. He's been orchestrating this peace treaty in the Middle East for several years, and the Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas said Saturday that they weren't going to accept the peace plan; they're going to reject it because it's spearheaded by the son-in-law of the president, Jared Kushner, and Abbas calls him that boy, to make him diminish. What do you call it? Make him smaller, anyway.
Yep.
And I had to laugh about that because, Jared Kushner's demeanor is always kind of, nose in the air, kind of I'm the greatest type thing in negotiating. And even though the deal will probably go ahead with the Palestinians, behind the scenes, they're actually making overtures to the White House about, okay, so what we want this, though. We don't want to go with what you originally said we'd have to agree with. But it was kind of funny to see Kushner be slapped down a bit verbally anyway by this guy, the young pup, the boy.
Yeah,
and so I found it amusing. So anyway,
I like that. I like that reference. Yeah, the boy, the boy.
If you look at the picture that I've got there, it was perfectly done because it's like he's been told that to his face, and he kind of goes, "What?"
Yeah,
like.
Yeah, that is a perfect selection of a picture. My goodness.
Yeah. The tensions are still rising over there. I mean, in slide 45, I showed how they had an explosion in the gas pipeline between Egypt and Israel, which was part of the old peace treaty that they had. And so somebody is, interrupting the power supplies to Israel. And it made me think, wow, if one guy can come up there and put a bomb on the pipeline and blow it up, that interrupts the supply of gas to Israel for some time. And if they do that in other places that have gas pipelines, like, into Jordan from Israel and things like this, well, these become very vulnerable targets, which can create havoc of unknown proportions in these countries that depend on the oil supplies and gas.
I never realized it was that exposed and that vulnerable from what I'm looking at in that image.
Yeah.
Okay, that's...
There must be somebody looking at it, overseeing it, or guarding it somewhere, but they still managed to miss the guys that came up and blew it apart.
Yeah. That doesn't give me more fuzzy. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Quickly here, slide 43, in a place called Tau, T-A-U, it's a dig. It was outside Jerusalem, and they found a temple that's like King Solomon's temple, but they say it wasn't. It's just big enough that it could have been. And it's an interesting story to read because Israelis have been trying, ever since they got the country back together again, to figure out where King Solomon's temple was, where his castle was, or his digs where he lived, because they wanted to prove that King Solomon existed and that King David existed. And they've been trying, with all kinds of archaeological digs and research to find, either remains or ruins of Solomon and David that they can prove that they existed. And to me, it's been an exceptional thing to realize is that they don't have, like physical proof of King David or of King Solomon. Yet there was so much of history written about him, even in the Arab countries. It's like somebody just wiped the evidence of him even existing away somehow. It's just another one kind of getting close in the archaeological digs to maybe finding out where the remains of their castles, their kingdom are.
Interesting to think about. Very good pictures at that link, by the way. Very interesting pictures. Stan, you did it again. You took us to another full hour right here on Tuesday night. I want to thank you so very much, and God bless you. Thank you for
Thank you.
everything
God
did.
bless you.
All right, folks.
Bye now.
We're out of time. Until tomorrow, may God bless each and every one of you. Don't forget, Patreon meeting next Sunday night, 7 o'clock. Steve Quayle coming up this Thursday night, by the way. May God bless. Good night.